everybody. Good evening. How we doing? How we doing? First time back in a month. I have to get used to doing this again. Had a couple of crazy weeks where had work dinners, work events. I was out of town. Then the holidays, and it just all of a sudden we're here. Now it's December. It's December 1st. Basically missed the whole month of November, I think. But welcome back. Cheers to being here. We're talking dessert wine and all the different types of dessert wine that there are to consume out there these days. So I hope you're ready for that sticky icky, because we're gonna be talking the whole gamut and some other kind of fun stuff that we got there, that I personally kind of fell in love with really early in my wine venture, and it's evolved over time, and probably going to be circling back to a few fun things as we move forward into the future. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any comments. Shoot them off, in the text, in the chat, and we'll get to you. But yeah, how's everyone doing? How's it going? I see Live Laugh Lloyd in the chat. How you doing, sir? Let me know if you can hear me well. I don't have any of my... I guess I could turn it on, to be quite honest, right now. Let's see how everything's reacting. New settings, trying to get some stuff figured out. Don't see any of my desktop audio going through, so but mic's going through, so I guess that's all the good stuff there. Let's see. Test something. Oh, there we go. We got it. It's there. It's coming through. There we go. Gotta put them chill beats. Yeah, I've been trying to get my dual streaming set up. My dual PC setup. Can't really figure out the audio end without going to a full mixer that's gonna take the audio and send it all around and push it back. But I think I'll figure it out eventually. So far I'm trying to work on a single PC and have that set up to be able to stream, play, and all that good stuff. So what are you all drinking tonight? I'm gonna be popping something special. I'm gonna do it in a hot minute, but I'm gonna be actually opening up a 2007 Dow's vintage Porto from a graduation gift from college that I got. This was a special gift I got from, oh gosh, I think it was my grandparents. I can't remember at this point. Parents, grandparents, someone, they actually got me. This was a really critically acclaimed vintage in 2007, and I graduated in 2010, and then I've been sitting on it for the last 11 years. So we're definitely going to pop that open and let it breathe here. I'm actually gonna Corvin a little bit out. It's port, so I wanna be able to see and taste that wine over the next couple of years, as it's should be walking into its prime right now, but I want to be able to see it over the next couple of years and just slowly dose a little out. I think that'd be really fun. Yeah. So let's get started. So dessert wines. There are essentially five essential dessert wine styles, or it can be categorized into 5 different styles. And so the first is I think one of the most obvious is sparkling wine. Your sparkling wine, your champagne, your Asti, your Asti Spumante, your sparkling Gewürztraminer, fruity sparkling wines, even what is I'm blanking on it right now. So like sparkling reds. All those are considered um, are dessert wines, and they're fun for their, that was one of my first episodes was on dessert wines, and the fun of having or sparkling wine, and go into champagne and all the different aspects of that, and the production styles, and there's a wide range to all of these, from their sweetness levels to their non-sweetness levels. So we're not talking about brut sparkling. We're talking about the sec and demi-sec levels, where they're highly, highly sweet sparkling wines. And because of the carbonation acidity, it kind of helps balance those aspects of it. And so we're talking that high 70 plus grams per liter of sugar, walking in the door, and can even go up even higher with Moscato d'Asti and Asti Spumantes and like that. They're fairly sweet. So that's our first foray. Again, always cracks me up. In French, demi-sec means off dry, but in the amount of sugar in a demi-sec wine is through the goddamn roof. So I always love how they always put that. So the next category is they categorize as a light sweet dessert wine, and this can be your a sweet Riesling, sweet Muscat, sweet Chenin Blanc, sweet Gewürztraminer. This could be White Zin, really, if you want to put a categorization there. It can be California Moscato. Those can be kind of considered dessert wines because of the levels of sweetness. When you're getting that high level. And there's tons of other styles. The Chenin Blancs from South Africa and the Loire. Then there's even like off-sweet Viogniers from France, and then there's German varieties, much like the Gewürztraminer and Riesling. They have some other Müller, Thurgau, I can't enunciate it. And then even substyles of like German Rieslings and Alsatian wines that are going to be kind of in that light sweet category. Still sweet, but not dessert wine sweetness. And that kind of walks us into that richly sweet dessert wine. So this is talking your Tokais, your very sweet, like botrytis white wines, your sauternes, your ice wines, just sweet high-end Gewürztraminers. And so, and then there's even like a light, richer to darker style. Some are more oxidized in this spectrum, which make them fairly interesting. And most of these are made in outside the United States. Especially ice wines, you're seeing a lot from Canada. You're seeing a lot from the northern countries in Europe, and areas where they can grow botrytis on the grapes to be able to grow that mold and find that character, and then make those noble rot white wines, which can be fairly interesting. And Sauternes obviously coming from Bordeaux, and basically taking late harvested Sauvignon Blanc, pressing off that like honey sweetness, that honeycomb, aldehydic, oxidized style on a lot of these that are lighter. Sauternes are also botrytized, so that's interesting. Tokais as well. And then there's the whole like straw mat style of wines that are actually kind of laid out to raisin a bit. And it's, Germans and Greeks and Italians have done it. It's fairly interesting style stuff. First time viewer. Panda. How you doing, man? He did play Rebirth with me a couple days ago. Yep. Well, man, thanks for jumping in the chat. I do a Wednesday, a wine theme, educational section. Tonight I'm doing dessert wines. So if you're curious about wine, man, I do it every Wednesday around 8 p.m. 8 to 8:30 p.m. Every Wednesday. Looking to do it some more, but I like to try and keep some topics fresh and all that. Dude, man, I'm doing good. It's a fun to get back on and start streaming again. I'll be playing a little bit later. Your wife hates wine. Oh no. What are we gonna do? Got to get her to venture out. What does she like to drink? And then I need to get. This bottle is so fancy that I got coming in. Divorce. Harrison Nizzle. I gotta cut this bad boy open. This is an intense bottle I got going on here. It has a regular cap, and then it has a plastic underneath, probably from the long-term storing. She doesn't drink anything. Hey, that's not bad, man. Hey, you got a sober driver all the time? Sounds perfect. So, as long as she's not some teetotaler that hates it when you drink, that can be annoying. But if she married you, I'm pretty sure she was okay with it, as long as you're not like a raging alcoholic or anything weird. I gotta get into this bottle. So, one kind of cool thing about Italian wines and Portuguese wines, they do these tax seals, and this used to be done in like American spirits, but basically it's something that goes from front to back. This is kind of degraded over the last 14 years, but these little seals are hard to get onto, and this even has this plastic piece. And man, I don't have my knife on me, which kind of sucks, but it's just like impermeable plastic. All right, so we're back on our richly sweet wines, our ice wines, our sauternes. Again, like I said, there's California wines like White Zin and Muscats that are very similar style, but ours are a little more fresh and fun when it comes to that. Now we got all this trash in front of me. Ice wines are fun. Ice wines are fun to make. Interesting style wine. You're actually waiting for it to actually be frozen when it's harvested. Then you gotta press these like rock hard ice grapes, and then what you get is so concentrated, and then you just get like a fermentation that just goes halfway, and you get this bad boy down. You can see my tree in the background. That's cool. Glad I planned that one out. Camera, boom. All right. Yeah, and it just makes some delicious wines that you can age. All right, and then next category of dessert wines is your sweet red wines. What I do on my crushed summer breaks from all the frozen grapes, then you're just foobar at that point, especially when it comes to I feel like this is, I'm going to have to clean the crap out of this Corvin right now, so I'm going to Corvin out this 2007 Vintage Dow port. Dow's Vintage port. I'll actually try and show the action here. See if I can get up and do this while not spilling or breaking something. Let's see if I can do it. I only need a little bit. Ooh, only need a little bit. Yeah, so you don't want your December to break, because all right, get this out of here. I'll go clean this up in a minute. Let that bottle seal. It's concentrated because the water inside remains frozen. That's exactly right. So the idea behind ice wine is you're only going to be getting out mainly the sugar. So normal sugar content coming out of fruit is 20 to 30. You're going to be getting into the 40s. And so that's kind of the fun thing. You get this highly, highly concentrated just from the freezing aspect. And it's mostly on these white varieties that are kind of floral and fun. And so as they age, those floral varieties get honeyed and concentrated in that effect, so they become awesomely delicious. Get this music off here because it's annoying me. On the red side, so we're kind of those are white styles essentially. On the red side, this basically a bunch of different styles from all the world that are late harvest or dessert wines that are generally made in a varying amount of style, from the late harvest style, trying to get highly concentrated flavors. And then there's a kind of a cheaper style that you're going to be adding sugar and alcohol, kind of like a faux port. And we'll get to port in a second. Hold on, I gotta sneeze. All right. Yeah, Harrison. Do other countries get to add sugar to their wines? There are countries that can add sugar to the fermenters. In the United States, we can add grape sugar back to um, wines when it's finished as a final touch, or a really increase of sweetness. Um, the rules do change in different states in the United States. For one, they change country by country, region by region, on what you can do and how you have to label that. What's the differences in that? What the classification is on those things. So those little things have an effect going forward. Yeah, like so one thing in California we can't do, we can't add sugar um, back to we can't add non grape sugar back to a fermenter. Yeah, your knowledge is definitely secondhand. But you should have picked up more from this, man. Come on, pay more attention. You're just too into books and reading English and Latin probably, or you're just not that interested, one way or another. Or maybe your ex roommate needs to make it more interesting. I'm not sure. Yeah. So yeah, like one interesting thing is like in Washington State, they can add sugar to the incoming grapes to adjust for less ripe conditions, which is interesting. Um, that is, one rule that they, most people wouldn't know or think about, that I don't think they utilize very often anymore. Let's talk about RS and connectivity results. Oh, I bet you're very familiar with that. Um, and then, like in California, we can add grape concentrate, which is basically grape juice that they've crushed, destemmed, pressed off, and then you have that fresh juice. You have that fresh juice that you then filter and then run through essentially a vacuum, um, heated vacuum filter that removes the water because of that high amount of vacuum and temperature, changing you're changing the relationship of basically the system through, I forget the damn term, but it's like PV equals nRT. You're changing the pressure and the temperature. That's your change some aspects of what the nRT is. Maybe someone else can remind me what that means. Ah, crap! Now I gotta Google it. PV equals nRT. What is that constant? PV equals nRT. Ideal gas law. That's the one. Oh yeah, ideal gas law. Where P, V, and T are pressure, volume, and temperature, and N is the amount of substance, and the R is the ideal gas constant. Yep. So you change P and V or T, and it helps change the amount of N you need to affect the system. Hotter, different pressures. Pretty zesty. Pretty zesty. Good old science is right. So yeah, back on these sweet reds. Oh man, this is fun. So there's different styles from Italy that are these sweet versions. There's uh, interesting ideas from Alto Aldridge, which is area out of um, good Lord Argentina, and then there's like Amarone wines, which are um, dried grapes on the red side. They make Amarone from that, and they ferment these like dried um, wines there. And then you have like kind of more typical like late harvest wines, basically where they're just so ripe that the alcohol is going to be super high, but they're also going to stick. They're not as high as the sugars aren't as high as port wines, and alcohol's not as high as port wines, but they're definitely going to be they're going to be kind of a faux style that. And then you get into your last style, and that is your fortified wines that you are purposely adding a high amount of neutral spirits to either stop the fermentation or get the wine to a high enough alcohol level where yeast can't continue to grow. Basically around 17, 18% is kind of where that starts. Sometimes it progresses up to like 20, 21%. And what that does is, first off, save the sugar, extract out a lot of color and other aspects because of that high alcohol content. And you're mostly on the skins when you're doing this on a red wine. And then the last thing is the shelf life. And that's really where port and dessert wines really came from, is the ability to, these wines will last. And if you talk about in the 14, 15, 1600s, if you could get distillate and distill and increase the alcohol on a wine, you're going to be able to save that from going basically to vinegar for like a long voyage when you have to go find the Americas or something. You're going to need something that's going to last that trip, and port is definitely going to be able to do that because it has enough alcohol to kill off anything that can potentially grow in there. So what I'm drinking is a vintage port, and there's when you talk about fortified wines, port is just one specific area of northern Portugal along the Douro River, and they get classified as Porto wines. There's a couple different styles of Porto, or port in general, and then there's other, you can make a port wine, you just can't call it port anymore. And then people fortify all sorts of different aspects when you're talking about Madeiras or sherries, or all the different. Did you remember the exact river? Yeah. Yeah. My parents actually just got back from Portugal a couple months ago, so they were in that whole area. It's just like a common fact for if you're talking Portugal and port. The Douro River runs right there in the off the town of Porto. So different um, different styles of fortified wines. There's kind of a couple different that come from there, and oh, well, so that my parents were also in the Azores as well, and I'm from the Azores. You ding dong. Um, my great grandparents were from Fayal and San Miguel. My parents visited mostly. They were mostly in the Azores on their trip, and then they did a little quick hop, skip, and a jump. What's the Azores with a Z? Live off Lloyd. They're subtropical islands. Um, you know 'em when they feel 'em. They're basically like it's basically the Hawaii of Europe. They're basically a archipelago off of Portugal, basically in the middle of the Atlantic. Um, Harrison's throwing the burns. Yeah, it's basically just like some subtropical islands out there, and it was basically a good stopping off point um, for the travelers back in the day, and it basically became a port town for people traveling across the Atlantic. Um, and it's a Portuguese territory, but it's a lot of very light-skinned white people because there's a lot of European influence coming over there. Um, our port styles of wine. So there's kind of your a light and heavy version of port. There's your ruby port, which is like um, a fresh, not so sweet version. You're trying to keep all the fruits and fun aspects of a port. And then there's the super aged, super oxidized tawny port. That's also sweeter, ages for a buttload long time. Can and gets more interesting with that amount of aging. Those tawny ports because of the nuttiness and the amount of age and time it takes to get to there. And then there's your vintage ports, and then like late bottle vintage ports, which are basically like a look at a single vintage year, like you would a vintage bottle of wine, like a 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley. These are this like I have in my glasses a 2007 vintage port from Dow's, and they're using all their different grapes. They're gonna make this up, um, and these are meant to be aged in bottle. That is, because these wines develop very slowly over time. And so it's spirity, but it's sweet. It's a little nutty and a little like a really fine grade tobacco. It's really nice because of that. Yeah, and some people age vintage ports for. Hey Harrison, man, thanks for stopping in. Really appreciate you, sir. Good to see you. Have fun teaching those kiddos more and more about your Latin. Oh, but really, really kind of pretty dark fruit, almost fresh raspberries, kind of muddled in a bunch of very older, darker fruits. Mm. Some like oxidized fruity characters, like a strawberry, smoked strawberry. It's like herb crusted, like a tobacco, like a clovey leaf on top. Really, really interesting one, but still has some really great acidity. Wow. As the sugar falls off, I'm getting a great amount of the acid popping up, which is really, really fun. Um, so that's really cool. Matt, I did notice you saying you can drink a gallon of port. If you want to come down here and get a little, not a gallon of this, but I got a wee bottle. Um, yeah, so this this is a 14-year aged port. Um, and I'll probably have a little bit once a year at this point, to kind of see how that changes, and especially from a vintage like 2007, which was highly denoted. I think it was 2007 oops, Dow's Vintage Port. Don't have to type much anymore. Yeah, I mean, not a crazy expensive bottle, but let's see. Wine Searcher is always a good site. So good critic score. I mean, 95 points. That's pretty stellar as it comes off. Let's see if there's definitely some great vintages out there. Let's see if we can find like a higher. I mean, I think 2011 is basically calling on a 97. But there's been some really nice scores back in the early 90s. Let's see if we can find one. Oh, you start clicking around too much in websites, and they basically like, oh, you're a robot. So that's to verify you're not a robot. Love that. Anyhow, so that's what I'm drinking tonight. Well, I'm having a taste of. Maybe in a year, we'll mark this down. A year, we'll try it again and see how she's doing. Definitely a beautiful one. A lot of fruit, a lot to unwrap. There's almost too much to unpack that. It can definitely be interesting. Definitely be interesting to see how that evolves. Because it has minerality to it. There's some like slaty graveliness to it. I don't have my backpack or my notes, but I'll remember that and get that done here in a second. So that's our first foray into fortified wines is port. The next, my chat settings, I'll screw it up. So the next style is sherries, and there's all sorts of variations on sherries. There's the dry styles. There's mostly dry, and then it's basically an increasing amount of dryness, all the way to like PX or Pedro Jimenez, which are very very sweet sherries that are like very dark, sugary, figgy, raisiny. Um, and so like dry sherries are, a lot of the styles are very oxidized. You're taking grapes and purposely oxidizing them once they are done fermenting. Um, and depending on the style, it's usually done before they fortify them. Um, and then there's even sub styles of sherries um, that they use some interesting yeast and bacteria to add this aldehydic character on top of that. They'll call that a floor sherry. Um, Sometimes it's a blending component for these ones to add that aldehydic style. Um, but you're wanting that tart, nutty aromatic, and sometimes it's done through oxygenation. That's done through baking. You bake the wines. Um, that you're wanting to increase the temperature and time just to push all those reactions faster, get that aging done faster, to add that oxidized character a little more quickly. Um, and so that's one style. Another one, um, it is Madeira, which is a very similar-ish style to sherry. Um, the only major difference is kind of the I'm trying to think of the they're very similar, but it's basically from a trying to preserve the sweet and fruitiness through the fortification of that. Um, and I don't really have a good, can't really find the right way to say this. Um, I think it's the ideas of the different varieties you're going to be using for that, and then the style to either be dry or sweet or semi-sweet. Um, yeah, it's so similar. If you're sitting side by side, they're fairly similar to sherry's, but they don't have the same amount of like aldehydic character. They're a little more on the fruity style. They're not porty sweet. They're not as um, it's just different, I think, from where the region they were developed. The touch and how they do it, it makes it so different. Even though it's fairly similar, you're just adding alcohol to it at a certain point in the wine's life. And then there may be even um, these sub categories of additional work you're going to be doing to that. And so then there's one last kind of little subsection here, which is Vindu Natural, which or VDN is sometimes they hyphenate everything. And these are other similar to port style wines that are made uh, from different processing of different grape varieties from different areas of the world. They're very similar to Portuguese port wines, like Banyuls from southern France, or Muscat-based stuff from Austria or Italy. Um, yeah, or even Greek-style varieties that they're doing the same thing on once they can get a spirit. And that's really it. I mean, there's some very um, uh, obscure styles of this stuff, but this we're not going to get into the obscure of obscure here. We're trying to cover the high level aspects. But I appreciate you all for jumping in and listening. We're going to be taking a